Herzlich willkommen.
Grüß euch.
Добрий день.
Vítejte.
Välkommen.
Tervetuloa.
Dobrodošli.
Herzlich willkommen.
Welcome.
مرحبا.
Benvindo.
Καλώς ορίσατε.
Welcome.
Willkommen.
Willkommen.
Welkom in Antwerpen.
Welkom.
Welcome.
Welcome. Bonjour.
Welcome. Welcome. Bienvenue.
Benvenuti a ERC 2021.
Willkommen.
Hoş geldiniz.
Bine ați venit!
Willkommen.
Welcome to Antwerp.
Welcome to Antwerp. Welcome to the ERC Guidelines Congress 2021. My name is Koen Monsieurs. I'm the chair of the European Resuscitation Council. It's my great pleasure to open this Congress together with Jess Saw, the chair of our organizing committee. Welcome, Jess.
Good morning.
Hi. And also with us today is Gavin Perkins, our Director of Guidelines, and ILCO. Welcome, Gavin.
Good morning.
Hi. Now, you will probably remember our first virtual Congress in Manchester last October. It was an enormous success and highly valued by all our participants. And I'm really happy to see you all again today to take the next step, which is our Guidelines Conference. We have a world-class conference website, and we have fantastic speakers and panelists ready to engage with you about the new ERC guidelines, because this Congress is for you. And I must admit, I forgot to declare a significant conflict of interest. I was born in Antwerp. That's a long time ago and is probably irrelevant now. So to continue, Jess, you will guide us through the Congress website, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. What a great opening video. It's really exciting to have so many people on joining us this morning. So clearly you've all managed to log on to the website. I'm going to give you a quick guided tour through the website. So here goes. So you've all already entered the conference, but for those of you who are watching on YouTube, there's still time to register. You just hit the register now button. And if you're a ERC instructor or course director, you can register for free. You enter the conference by clicking onto the Enter Conference button and you get to the home page. And if you look along the bottom here, you've got the home page, the program, the exhibition center. So all our business partners and sponsors, you can chat to people in the conference, or you can take a break and look at CPR videos that's available on YouTube. Looking at the program, we have 3 channels. And just a few things to point out. So hopefully you've already put in your time zone. So that will then give you the content in your time zone. Secondly, there are 3 channels. So the first channel, or webinars A, is the ERC guidelines. We've then got a B channel, which is ERC non-guideline sessions. And these include the ERC Research Net, the Escape Net sessions, the Young ERC sessions, and also sessions for those of you who run ERC courses and are looking into getting courses restarted again with both the new guidelines and after disruption from COVID-19. And the third channel is a channel where our business partners and sponsors have sessions, and all these sessions are available live and then will be available afterwards to watch in catch up for those of you who are registered on the platform for the conference. Just to say, when you do get to the exhibition centre, all our business partners and sponsors have their booths. You can interact with their materials and also with representatives of these companies. So please do visit these booths and have a look around the exhibition centre. And just at the bottom there, while there's that little find attendees. So if you want to catch up with friends and colleagues from around the world and network, you can find people if they've given permission on the find attendees button. So you can catch up with your mates in between sessions and have a chat or arrange another meeting with them. Okay, if you scroll down the homepage, you can get to different locations. So we are in Antwerp, so each session is linked to a location in Antwerp. So the Ports House is for the Channel A, and it goes all the way to, a resource library in Nair Palace, and so on. So if you look along the bottom at those dots, just going to what happens if you click on a session. So you get the video there at the top to watch a session. You get the asking questions or comments down the side. And importantly, if you go to scroll down, if you go to the bottom, there's a short summary video, the guideline paper for the guideline sessions, and also the speaker bios if you click on those links. So there's lots of things to do in between sessions, or if you want to have extra information during a session. So lots of interactive stuff built into the platform, which gives you things to explore between sessions or during sessions. Finally, if you just want to cut to the chase and get to the guidelines, there's a library that lists all the guideline sections and links to the paper in resuscitation. So you just have to click on those links. And so you just find the library, click on the links for the guidelines. And lastly, before I hand back to Koen, there's a lot of social media around this. And the hashtag is Resus21. So looking forward to seeing all your tweets. I'm going to end there by saying, I hope you all have a great conference. I look forward to interacting with as many of you as possible, either on social media or through the chat channels, and enjoy the conference. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jess. That website looks great indeed, and thanks to all who have worked on this and even improved it from last time. Now over to Gavin. Gavin, you will now give us an introduction to the new ERC 2021 guidelines.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Kuhn, and also the opportunity to speak at this European Resuscitation Council Guidelines conference. I think it's a really exciting moment in time for Europe and the opportunities that these new guidelines bring for saving more lives from cardiac arrest. I'd like to start off by just sharing briefly with you my conflicts of interest in terms of transparency. I have no commercial conflicts of interest, but I have a number of research grants and volunteer roles that may be perceived to influence some of the content that I share with you over the course of the next 10 minutes. Why are we all here? Well, we're all here because cardiac arrest is a devastating condition that affects hundreds of thousands of people across Europe each year. The chain of survival concept pulls together the important components for optimizing outcome. But these data summarized here show that we still have some distance to go before the chain of survival achieves its maximal potential, and we can improve the survival rate so that more than 1 in 10 people survive sudden cardiac arrest. The formula of survival, as you'll learn about later in the conference, draws together the importance of the science, education and implementation. And the European Resuscitation Council guidelines really pull those 3 strands together as the formula to improve survival outcomes from cardiac arrest across Europe. We've seen a lot of change in recent weeks and in recent years. And having up-to-date guidelines are becoming increasingly important so that we can deliver evidence-based treatments to patients. And modern medicine really now demands immediate access to evidence-based treatment guidelines. But producing those guidelines becomes ever more challenging at an individual practitioner level as we see an exponential increase in the amount of science and evidence that can inform those guidelines. But of course, it's not just the relevant evidence that is important for developing guidelines. It's considering that evidence in the context of patients' values and preferences and the application of clinical judgment so that you can really then hit the sweet spot of delivering evidence-based practice to your patients. The European Resuscitation Council guidelines seek to provide evidence-informed guidance for the prevention and management of cardiac arrest for all ages. And we've built these guidelines together with our network of partners across Europe, and we've been informed and guided by the principles set out for high-quality clinical guidelines outlined in the Guideline International Network. And over the course of the next few slides, I'm just going to provide some of that methodological detail to help bring you confidence to the process that sits behind the guidelines that will be presented over the course of the remainder of the conference. Our guidelines sit in the context of our partnership with the International Liaison Committee of Resuscitation, whose vision is to save more lives globally through resuscitation. And our collaboration with ILCOR helps us to achieve our mission of preserving human life by making high-quality resuscitation available to all. These European Resuscitation Council guidelines are built on the foundation of the International Liaison Committee Consensus on Science and Treatment Recommendations, which are now part of a continuous evidence evaluation process. The ILCOR guideline development process pulls together regional resuscitation councils from around the world that have been hugely helpful in helping us develop the European Resuscitation Council guidelines. Our European Resuscitation guidelines have been brought to you from a collaboration from 25 countries spread throughout Europe, and they really do represent the state-of-the-art resuscitation science ready for delivery into clinical practice. In terms of just describing some of the process that sits behind the guidelines, I'm just going to spend a moment or two talking about some of the quality markers of the European Resuscitation guidelines. Our transparent decision-making process that are based around taking the International Liaison Committee Consensus on Science and Treatment Recommendations as the foundation for our guidelines, through discussing and debating these in the context of Europe, and bringing together consensus or highlighting differences of opinions before then going through a formal process of approval by the European Resuscitation Council General Assembly. We've had a transparent conflict of interest process. Members of the writing group completed annual disclosures of financial and non-financial conflicts of interest, and these were reviewed by the governance committee led by Leo Bossart, and these have been published throughout the guideline development process on the European Resuscitation Council website, and declarations of relevant conflicts of interest have been brought out during the context of any discussions. We set out the scope of our guidelines in June 2019 and very much valued the input from our partners throughout Europe on what were the most important topics for us to address during our guidelines 2021. In terms of the methodological process, much of this is set out in the ILCOR evidence evaluation process, but to summarise very briefly, key research questions or key clinical questions were identified. The evidence was assessed, debated by a panel considered in the context of the panels and society's values and preferences before producing consensus on science and treatment recommendations. This process has drawn on the expertise of knowledge synthesis units, expert systematic reviewers, and also task force systematic reviewers. Where we've addressed new topics or where there's been insufficient evidence to undertake a full systematic review, we've drawn on the benefits of scoping reviews and evidence updates, as summarised in the ILCOR Consensus on Science and Treatment paper. Our guideline recommendations are based on considering in the context of the GRADE evidence to decision framework that seeks to balance the benefit and harms of the available options against the resource use, ensuring equitable access and assessing the impact on health inequalities, on considering the acceptability to key stakeholders, as well as the feasibility of implementation. We've used the GRADE process to rate the evidence, producing strong recommendations when there's high certainty evidence sitting behind those recommendations. And we've assessed the quality of evidence again using the GRADE system, breaking these down into high, moderate, low, and very low quality of evidence. And we share these with you through the various chapters of the European Resuscitation Council guidelines. We've been hugely grateful to the support from the larger European resuscitation community and for all of the incredibly helpful comments and insights that came when we shared the guidelines for public comment at the ERC conference in October 2020, as well as allowing for open access comments to be made towards the end of October. The guidelines were then peer reviewed by the General Assembly before being presented to you today. ILCOR have adopted a continuous evidence evaluation process, and the ERC are constantly monitoring for updates on evidence. We remain committed to not making small incremental changes, but to focusing on a 5-year cycle where we pull together and synthesize new evidence, providing annual updates where required. The next 2 days, I think, are going to be incredibly exciting as we hear from all of the guideline chapter writing groups across the range of topics presented to you here. I hope that you're going to visit the European Resuscitation Council Congress website, as well as the website cprguidelines.eu, where you'll be able to access all of the guidelines. I hope that in reviewing the materials, you're going to notice a change in style. We've now summarized key changes. We've produced concise guidelines for clinical practice before breaking down and providing you with the evidence that informed the guidelines. We've refreshed and rewritten our algorithms, and we've developed a suite of infographics in order to share the key information from the guidelines in a ready, accessible and digestible format. It really has been my pleasure to work with such a great team across Europe and to enable us to bring the European Resuscitation Council Guidelines 2021 to you today. Thank you all very much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Gavin. It's my impression, Gavin, that these guidelines are probably the highest quality, best evidence-informed guidelines the ERC has ever produced, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think with the General Assembly and with our partners across Europe, I think a key message that came from them is that they wanted quality guidelines that they could rely upon. And the rigor that sits behind these guidelines, I think, is greater than we've done before, as demanded by our patients, as demanded by the clinicians that apply these guidelines in order to save more lives from cardiac arrest.
Yeah, whilst at the same time they are very usable probably because of the way they are presented and also because of the infographics you have shown. The infographics, by the way, are currently downloadable freely on cprguidelines.eu, all of them. So they make the guidelines that are quite complex, maybe in essence, they make them very useful, isn't it?
Yeah, no, very, very much so. And I think, in sitting behind the guidelines very much is the formula of survival concept, is that the science by itself is no good without the education and without the implementation frameworks. And with the writing groups, we've very much worked with that in mind. We want not only guidelines that sit on paper, we want guidelines that are implemented into practice and save lives.
Yeah. Thank you again, Gavin. Thank you, Jess, also. What's next? Next is the scientific track at noon, at least in Antwerp, with System Saving Lives by Federico Semeraro, who is the chair-elect of the ERC. That is probably the most important session of all, but I'm going to say that for all the sessions. So you're very much invited to attend that. But also right now is a session of our valued sponsors starting at in 5 minutes. So you still have time to walk towards the medieval Steen Castle. And in the Steen Castle, there is this sponsored session. So the sun is shining, at least in Antwerp. So you still have time to reach the session, and I would very much recommend that. This was the opening session. Thank you for attending. I'm hoping to see you in one of the next sessions, and I'm looking forward to a fantastic conference together with all of you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Cheers.
Okay. Bye.